So I'm new at testing accessibility. I've been testing functional before. Which criteria do you recommend I start with? There are so many.
Since you're new to this, starting with descriptive labels and keyboard operability can provide really good foundational results. Descriptive labels make sure screen readers announce items correctly, and keyboard operability checks if a product can be used without a mouse. Would you like to walk through how to test one of those, or are you curious about any others?
Well, I'm surprised because there's a criterion that sounds very much like keyboard operability, which is focus sequence. What's the difference between the two?
Well, keyboard operability checks if you can access content and controls using keystrokes, while focus sequence makes sure those items receive focus in a logical and sequential order that matches the visual layout, helping users to intuitively navigate. Do you want to go through the testing steps for one of those? Or
No,
perhaps...
I don't want to go. I need to know a little more of a probably related criteria, which is structural sequence.
Structural sequence deals with how the content is organized in the code to represent its relationships and reading order, ensuring that screen reader and keyboard users can understand the structure no matter how it's presented visually. Does that distinction help? Or would you like specific examples of how that matters for testing?
No, what I'm interested in is that when you say the content, so you're talking about any content, where the previous one, focus sequence, was only the interactive content, right?
You're right. Focus sequence focuses on interactive elements like buttons and links, while structural sequence looks at how all content, including static text and headings, is organized in the code to maintain a logical reading order and relationships. Would you like to know more about how to test structural sequence with a screen reader? Or maybe move to another criterion?
Yes, but before we move to a criteria, let's be specific here. So when we're talking about focus sequence, we're talking about tabbing through the UI, where with structural sequence, we can use other means than tabbing. We can use arrow keys, for example.
You've got it. Focus sequence main testing flow involves tabbing through the page, while structural sequence is tested by navigating linearly with a screen reader, often using arrow keys to read line by line, preserving the logical structure. Would you now like to move to a different criterion?
Yes, totally. So I want to move to something else. I noticed that I really have a hard time reading some of the text that is displayed on the UI. What can it be? Is that compliant, or what do you think?
Difficulty reading text could be related to font contrast. The guidelines say there has to be sufficient contrast between the text and its background, usually needing at least 4.5:1 ratio. Is the text small or maybe a light color against a light background?
Yeah, definitely. It's a contrast issue. Now, something else, I have links that are displayed there. They have sufficient contrast because I can really see them properly. There's no dot here, there's no ambiguity, but they are blue and there's no other ways to identify other than by the color. Is that compliant?
No, that wouldn't be compliant with the font contrast criterion. Color is never the only way to show something as a link. For visual identifiers, it's a best practice to also include an underline or an icon. Would you like to check if there are other links on the page and see how they look? Or move to a different criterion?
That'll be it for today, but thanks. Can you recap whatever we said today?
We primarily focused on the differences between keyboard operability, focus sequence, and structural sequence, clarifying how each deals with keyboard navigation versus overall content structure. We also touched on the importance of font contrast and ensuring links have dynamic identifiers beyond just color. Is there anything specific you want to confirm before we wrap up?
No, thanks.
You're very welcome. Feel free to reach out whenever you need help testing your UI again.